Well, good morning and welcome to each one who's joining us both in person and virtually this morning to this wonderful Huron County winter day. And I would like to call this meeting to order, and starting off with the warden's remarks. Being that it's 1 week in, I don't have anything spectacular to tell you except orientation, and it's exciting stuff. So we'll move right along to the approval of the agenda. And just for your note, we are going to be removing page 4 of report 11.5, planning fees, old schedule that no longer applies. So just so you're aware of that. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. So Councillor Basnet, seconded by Councillor McClellan. Those in favor? And that is carried. Is there anybody who has a pecuniary interest to disclose this time? Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Whereas I, Leah Noel, have a pecuniary interest with respect to bylaw 2024-093 to authorize entering into a contract HC 241001 for CCTV inspection and GPS reporting for asset management process with BM Ross and Associates Limited. I therefore declare a pecuniary interest, and the general nature of my interest is that my daughter is employed at BM Ross and Associates. Thank you.
And that is duly noted. Is there any other pecuniary interest to disclose? Seeing none, I would move on to approving the minutes from Council Day 2 and the special session of Council, the inaugural meeting, 2 sets of minutes. Is there someone willing to adopt? Past Warden McNeil and seconded by P. Heffer. Those in favor? And that is carried. We do have a delegation this morning, and it's the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And Stephanie Keating is joining us virtually. Welcome, Stephanie. And once Clerk Cronin has you geared up and ready, we look forward to your presentation.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Stephanie, you're good to go. You do have the option to share screen, or if you'd like, we can do that for you.
I believe I can share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Morning, everyone. So thank you for allowing me to attend today. My name is Stephanie Keating, and I'm the Director of Environment at the Nuclear Innovation Institute. And I'm here today to talk about something that we call the Climate Project. So first, let me set the stage with some context. Sorry, one moment. Which screen can you see?
We have the Climate Project, Huron County Council meeting, December 4th, 2024. It's your starting screen of the PowerPoint.
Okay, and can you see my presenter view or the main?
No, we just have the full screen. We don't have your notes, if that's what you're asking.
I'm just trying to figure out how to advance from here. There we go. Okay, thank you very much.
Perfect.
Apologies. So I'd just like to set the stage for some context. The world is saturated in news and information about the perils of climate change. From a steady stream of scientific studies to daily climate-related news, this global scale can make the issue feel less tangible and less urgent. So these are just some headlines that we've pulled from recent news articles. There's lots of information that sort of paints the picture on a very global scale. And so there's a clear need to make climate change information relevant to this region and to share what it means for where we live. So that's why we created the Climate Project. Funded by Bruce Power and created by the Nuclear Innovation Institute, the Climate Project aims to localize research and scientific knowledge on climate change, making it relevant for people in this region, those in Bruce, Grey, and Huron counties, and local Indigenous communities, all located within the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation territory. We aim to provide actionable intelligence on what a changing global climate could mean for where we live. So the information is presented on a dynamic website that's full of impactful visuals, videos, and accessible text. The research is full of information from qualified sources in academia, conservation authorities, governments, municipal, provincial, and federal governments, local Indigenous knowledge, industry partners, NGOs, and much more. Some of the groups that we've talked to include Maitland and Grey Stauble Conservation Authorities, the Son Environment Office, the Historic Saugeen Métis, the Lake Huron Coastal Center, and much more. We present the information as a story told in 3 chapters. So the first chapter is Air, which contains information on rising air temperatures, air quality trends, precipitation and drought, extreme weather, forest fires, and more. We'll share with you some examples. Our beloved winter traditions may be on thin ice. Over the past 30 years, so from 1991 till 2020, Grey Bruce has seen a median of 64 days per year where the temperatures remain below freezing all day. So these are called ice days. According to projections drawn from Climate Data Canada, in the most intensive warming scenario, there may be as few as 14 days per year at the end of the year, at the end of the century, where temperatures remain below zero all day. And these days may not be consecutive. So in that case, it may not be cold enough for ice rinks or lakes to freeze over. The next chapter is water, which contains information on water temperatures, ice cover, shoreline erosion, aquatic ecosystems, and invasive species, and with a large focus on Lake Huron. So, for example, Canadian and scientific agencies have been making detailed observations of the ice cover on the Great Lakes since 1973. Between 1973 and 2018, ice cover on all Great Lakes has seen a general decrease, with Superior, Huron, and Erie losing ice cover more quickly than Ontario and Michigan. In 2021, if we compare the average ice cover of Lake Huron to the long-term average from 1973 to 2020, the long-term average was 64.6% ice cover, but in 2021, it was only 48.3%. So what does this mean? Well, this feels particularly relevant to talk about today, as the reason I'm unfortunately not joining you in person is indeed weather-related. So this is a great recipe for increased lake effect snow. So the ingredients for lake effect snow are a warm, unfrozen lake, some masses of cold air, and a breeze blowing in from the west. This allows the clouds to more easily, the water to more easily evaporate into clouds, and we see the results of it on days like today. Another potential consequence of this is increased erosion on our shorelines. So this is an example of erosion in Saugeen Shores in 2020. A lack of ice cover coupled with high water levels, strong winds, and high waves is a recipe for a great deal of erosion. And finally, the land chapter contains information on forest health, agriculture, growing seasons, wetlands, rivers and streams, watersheds, and diseases and pests that affect our agriculture and livestock. So our community's forests and tree cover are a huge part of life in this region, from ecotourism, locals getting out to enjoy nature, industry. These are just a few images from the Bruce County Museum's collections dating from the mid-late 1800s until the mid-20th century. And the Climate Project discusses how forests are impacted by climate change, including invasive species and water usage. So for example, we highlight work from conservation authorities, including watershed report cards, which assess a number of environmental factors, including forest conditions. So this is an example of forest health from Saugeen Conservation. And you can see for the most part, the green means excellent, good, or fair, and then the yellow means poor or very poor. For the most part, the forests in this region are in good condition, but there's a couple of areas where things could be improved. And here's another example from Grey Stauble Conservation. And we have the same sort of assessment, a lot of really good or fair condition, and then a couple of areas where there could be some improvement. We're currently talking with Maitland Conservation about their forest health assessments and how to integrate those results into the Climate Project website. We've included spotlights on a number of local organizations throughout the site. So for example, Alice, who does great work on restoring marginal areas of farmland to naturalize them. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation Environment Office, the Lake Huron Coastal Center, and of course, as we just seen, conservation authorities. So why does this matter? The Climate Project can provide decision-making support with up-to-date and localized information that can help inform policy and planning decisions that address climate risks. It can also serve as a community resource on how climate change is affecting neighborhoods, communities, businesses, and the environment. So council and staff can use Climate Project as a reliable source of data for informed decisions on climate policy, a resource for educating and engaging citizens on local climate issues, and a platform to share local adaptation, mitigation, and sustainability efforts. So I look forward to talking with all of you. If any of you have information that you'd like to see incorporated into the site, I would love to hear. Please feel free to visit it at climateproject.ca. And if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And I'm going to go to council. Is there any questions anybody has for Stephanie's presentation? Seeing none. Oh, there is Councillor Heffer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. To Stephanie, I'm just curious, when you said about the warming of the lake or less ice cover, it would have been really interesting if we could have seen maybe instead of just the 1 year with 48%, if we could have seen maybe the last 7 years. For me, it just show a little bit, it just make a little bit more sense for me instead of just isolating 1 year. That we saw maybe a few more years in there. Just my thought on that anyways, Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Warden, I would like to respond to that. That's a fantastic point. And we do actually include visuals and graphics to that extent on the site. We have some satellite images that have shown sort of the extent of ice cover for the past several years. So that's a great point, and I could include things like that in future presentations. I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you, Stephanie. And Past Warden McNeil has a question as well.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Warden. To Stephanie, thank you very much for this work. It's great that you brought the awareness of this, the way that our climate is changing, and bringing that to our attention. So thank you very much for this work that you've done.
Good. Any other questions? Councillor Bazinet.
Stephanie, I just want to commend you as well and your team at NII. I attended the Clean Energy Conference in Tiverton, and it was well done. There was a wealth of information there over a day and a half. And, you know, I really enjoyed actually that Asthma Canada was involved in that conference as well, because I think, you know, when we talk about climate and clean energy, we're thinking about outside, and actually, you know, it also involves the interior of your homes as well with clean air. So once again, thank you, and thank you for being here virtually.
Any other questions? So Stephanie, thank you. And it's too bad you couldn't be here in person, but we're glad that you're able to join us, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So what I'd be looking for then is a motion to receive the report for information. Councillor Bazinet, Councillor Noel would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. We're now at councillor comments, and I believe Past Warden McClellan has something.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm hoping this is all good news. I received a letter from the Solicitor General yesterday, so I'm assuming that either each municipality has received one or will be getting one. It was about my concerns about the OPP costing, and that my staff has not had a chance to do the final calculations, but just a quick cursory reading of it, it appears that all the retroactive costs of the OPP are being covered by the province right away. And so the only thing that we might be paying on top of last year's price is just what the normal increase would have been, which is certainly good news. In addition to that, and I forget which item it is, it also talks about the fact that $125 million will be going towards prisoner transfer and court security costs will be doled out on top of what had been paid in the past. So that item coming up later in our agenda may be moot at this point until we actually know how that breaks out and what the split is for all the municipalities that have those costs involved. So on behalf of certainly Huron East and the rest of our neighboring municipalities, I already sent a thank you to Lisa Thompson for the quick response that she gave us on this, and thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for that update. Any other councillor issues? Councillor Harding, I see you have your hand raised.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you, Doug. Go ahead.
Just to add to Councillor McClellan's take on this letter we received, I know Howick got a letter too, and it's very complicated, the percentages, the way they were changing some of the input to this, but my treasurer told me yesterday that as it stands now, we have a 3% increase in our OPP coverage instead of a 21%. We're still working with some pressure to put on the provincial government, but it is certainly a lot better. Thank you.
Yeah, much better math. Thank you, Councillor Harding. Anyone else? Councillor Basnet.
Yeah, in regards to the mute point with court security and prisoner transportation, the transfer payment program for 2025 calendar is 125 million, like Councillor McClellan just stated, but that's not going to be any change to what we're looking at here from what I've been informed. There's been no difference in what we're going to be discussing here.
So Councillor Basnet, I think we can have that discussion when we get to the topic on the
Just thought I'd bring it up.
Thank you. Want to welcome Councillor Klopp joining us. Councillor Klopp, can you just test your audio just so we know it's working? Yeah, that works.
Yep, thank you. Didn't know it was on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Klopp.
Thank you.
So I think we can move on to our consent agenda. There's 8 items on there, and we'll start. Is there any specific item anybody wants to speak to? And if not, then I'd be looking for a motion to accept the consent agenda. Councillor Vanstone and Councillor Passwarden Ginn. Those in favor, and that is carried. So planning and development. And I'd like to welcome Megan Tid-Hrinick to join us. And Megan, good to see you with us this morning. And when you're ready, you just lead us through.
Okay. Good morning, Warden and members of council. It's nice to see you today. Today we have a draft plan of subdivision application that was submitted for the purposes of developing lands in Port Albert. Here you can see the location of the vacant piece of property. It's outlined in blue on your screen there. It is bounded by Russell Street to the north, Lakeshore Development to the west. We have Victoria Street Drain to the south, and then another subdivision that was approved more recently called 9 Mile. The subject lands are located within the village of Port Albert. They're currently designated as such in the ACW official plan, and they are zoned VR1-H, so we have a holding symbol on it in the ACW zoning bylaw. The lands are approximately 6.5 acres. So here we have the proposed plan. It is 11 lots, as well as 2 municipal roads that would provide frontage for the new lots. The lots vary in size from about 0.4 acres, 0.46 acres to about 0.65 acres. Access to the subdivision will be provided off of Russell Street to the north. Arthur Street road allowance on the east side is proposed to provide frontage to 1 to 3 lots, and it will be constructed in conjunction with the neighboring subdivision. And then there is a cul-de-sac that will terminate at the north part of the drain, and it will be called Colburn Street. The subdivision, excuse me, will be serviced through private water and septic, given that no municipal services are located in Port Albert here. Stormwater management from this development is proposed to be directed south toward Victoria Street drain. So in circulating the application, we did not receive any comments from the public or surrounding neighbors. Comments were received from a number of our agencies, Canada Post and Enbridge Gas being one of them. They had some standard approval conditions that are attached with the report. Bell Canada confirmed receipt of circulation. Hydro One did not have any concerns with the application. Historic Saugeen Métis has reviewed the draft plan of subdivision and had no objection or opposition to the proposed development. Maitland Valley Conservation Authority also provided comments on natural hazards, and they have been addressed through a geotechnical report. So there are about 13 criteria for evaluating subdivisions under the Planning Act. All 13 pieces have been reviewed for conformity and do meet these requirements. The PPS directs residential development to occur in designated settlement areas, such as Port Albert. The lands for the proposed development are presently vacant and within the Port Albert settlement area boundaries, and they are also zoned already for residential development to occur. The development will not negatively impact the ecological systems, agricultural resources, or natural resources in the area. The absence of full municipal infrastructure available to the service to service the subject lands effectively limits the ability to provide a full range of housing options, so more density, in other words. However, the proposed residential lots are of a size which will allow potential additional residential units in the future. This is the highest level of intensity or density that we can have in Port Albert, provided the servicing constraints that we have. So it is recommended that the Council of the County of Huron grant draft plan approval for the subdivision, subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you, Megan. And I'm going to go to council. Is there any questions or clarification needed from Megan on the report that she gave us? Seeing none, it's always good to see development take place, and I'd be looking for a motion then to approve the recommendations of Megan. Councillor Vanstone, do I have a second for that? Past Warden McNeil? Those in favor? And that is carried. And Megan, you have a follow-up motion for us?
So the effective public and agency comments are 2A. No public comments were received, so there was no effect on this decision. And 3B, agency comments were received in support of the application, the effect of which resulted in a decision to approve.
Thank you, Megan. And we'd be looking for someone to put forward a motion to accept 2A and 3B. Councillor Goderich and Councillor Bazinet. Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Megan. Enjoy the rest of your day. At this time, we have Denise Van Amersfoort with a presentation on the provincial policy statement. And Denise joining us. Welcome, Denise, and go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Council. Council's received a presentation from myself on the new provincial planning statement recently. At that time, Council directed that staff bring back a terms of reference to outline how the planning department would propose an amendment to the county official plan to bring it into conformity with the provincial planning statement. I've provided that here today with an outline of what we are proposing, and I'd be happy to take questions.
All right. Thank you, Denise. Is there any questions on Denise's report? Go ahead.
The enhanced requirements for early and meaningful consultation with Indigenous nations, does it specify which groups? And secondly, is there a time frame that they have to respond?
Denise, could you respond to that, please?
Yeah, so there is a list overall. What I would caution Council is that Indigenous interests go far beyond traditional territory in some cases. So if you think of Lake Huron being of an interest to a nation, obviously that can encompass a very large geography and as well major tributaries that would go into the lake, for example. So I wouldn't, there is absolutely a list, but it's a much wider geography than Council might, initially think.
Mm-hmm.
I would also state that we're very respectful when working with Indigenous nations in that trying to accommodate timeframes, also recognizing that the capacity of the nations to respond and the volume of inquiries and work that's happening on municipalities across Ontario. So this is something we're very much working on building relationships so that we can understand how to best work with the nations.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Lobb.
Conceivable then that there could be delays in these projects?
Denise, could you respond to that?
Yeah, no, we encourage early consultation as part of the process. So if someone is doing an archaeological assessment, they know up front that they are to engage with Indigenous nations prior to that work even beginning. And no, we've not received feedback that there's been, undue delay, but there certainly is an accommodation of schedules. Again, if you just think about, if I think of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, for example, the territory in which they would be involved in applications, in addition to long range planning, there's an incredible volume. And so we have to think about, how do we be respectful and ensuring that the process is meaningful engagement. So I would say this is an ongoing piece for planning and development and the corporation as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Any other questions? Past Warden Ginn.
Yeah, I'll just carry on that train of thought because we have a proposal in our municipality and we were told we needed to consult with 5 Indigenous groups and we're not getting responses. Planning applications have time limits on them, and I see issues with us not getting to a planning approval decision if we're not getting correspondence back from the First Nations. And, I think there's going to be some problems with that. I understand that they don't have the administrative capacity to always comment, but we have timelines, and at some place we got to reconcile those differences.
Yes. Denise, any response?
I would say this is a conversation that's happening across the province, including AMO. I think there's recognition. There's possibly a disconnect currently between the capacity and the fact that there is a need for meaningful consultation. So what I can say is that from the planning department's perspective, we have met with several of the nations in the past. Those conversations have been very helpful in directing how we can scope which applications that we're sending so that it's not all of them. And it really is focused on the issues that are of most concern to the nations. And that relationship building work is something that is ongoing. I can state with the South Huron official plan, we've done direct consultation with Chippewas of Stoney and Kettle Point. So that's been very productive. So there's a number of moving pieces, I would say, on this topic, and we will continue to try to streamline it to the point that we can, recognizing that, again, some of these things are outside of staff's control.
Thank you, Denise. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lobb?
The one that says reflect stronger direction for agricultural systems approach, need for agricultural impact assessments. Could that be expanded a little for me, please?
Denise, would you comment on that?
Certainly. Apologies, Councillor Lobb. There was a previous report that went to County Council in October, as well as to all of the local municipalities that spoke about the agricultural systems planning approach. This is a new requirement from the province as a result of the provincial planning statement. Essentially, it requires us to look at our agricultural system in a more detailed way, not only the land, so from CLI rating, fragmentation, lot size, but also looking at all of the agricultural investment along the value chain in Huron specifically. So that's the ag systems approach. Also, we are now required on an application basis to require agricultural impact assessments. We do have a terms of reference guiding what those assessments are required to include. Basically, it's about ensuring that we are protecting agriculture and protecting its ability to evolve into the future. And so, yes, we will be seeing more, and council will be hearing more about how we protect agriculture moving forward.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Denise. So we're going to move on to a motion. If there's someone willing to approve the report by Denise and initiate an amendment for the official plan. Past Warden McClellan and Councillor Finch would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. And Denise, you have another presentation for us. Is there anything to add to that?
I do. Thank you, Warden. I will share just a few comments. Again, I won't walk through the entire report. Just wanted to point out a few things in terms of residential building activity. So I will share my screen here just so that everyone can see the report. And I think, first of all, just a big thank you. This is a real collaboration between the local municipalities and the planning department. We work with each 9 to collect the building permit data and then compile it in sort of a meaningful way so that we can have more of a county picture as to what's happening from a residential building standpoint. These insights are very consistent with the conversations we've been having recently with developers. And for council, we are also members. The county is a member of the Perth Huron Builders Association. We found that partnership to be very valuable. And again, the comments that we're seeing, the data that we're seeing here, they're very consistent. And it also helps to provide insight as to where changes to planning frameworks have been effective and where we potentially may have more work to do. So again, I won't go through everything, just wanted to point out a few things as you go through. What you will note when we look at total building permits issued, we don't have Q4 data yet, so the fourth quarter of 2024. We do typically, over the past number of years, we see about 20% of total permits come in Q4, so we are missing a bit, and we do anticipate seeing it very close to the 2023 levels. So as you see with the average, we've sort of, we were certainly well above in 2022 and now have dropped slightly below, but again, not too far off of our average from 2016 to 2020. The other thing I thought I would point out, we did put a specific focus on residential building permits for the purpose of this report. What you might notice, council, is that there is a difference between the number of permits and then the number of units. And just a reminder that that's because of, apartment buildings, for example, 1 building permit, many units. So that's why those numbers don't totally align, if anyone had been wondering why. We do get into value a little bit, so council can see the amount of investment that's coming into the various municipalities, which I always think is interesting. The part that the planners were particularly interested to look at was unit mix. And while we certainly have a good insight based on planning applications and also being in the local municipal offices every week, it's certainly interesting to see the final numbers in terms of how many higher density or more compact units are we seeing versus more of the singles? Now, singles are still strong in the county, but we are starting to see more in those higher density unit types, which is a good thing. I'm just going to move down here for a minute. What this data doesn't tell you is that the singles that are being built on average are smaller. So if we think historically, a lot frontage in a new residential subdivision might have been 20 meters wide. We're now approving plans of subdivision with 15-meter wide frontages, sometimes down to as low as 12 meters. And so, right, when you think about that overall street frontage, all of a sudden there's that many more singles along the street, and therefore, yes, it's singles, but they're smaller singles. Maybe they're more geared to, a more affordable price point. They're single floor living, for example, maybe for seniors. And so that's, again, something that this data doesn't tell you that I thought I would point out. I think my favorite part of the report, to be honest, was looking at the new additional residential unit numbers. The planning department and the local municipalities have spent considerable effort over the last number of years implementing the housing friendly lens. What this means is that many new residential units are not crossing the planning department's desk, and that is exactly by design. So if you look at the additional residential units, the triplexes, the fourplexes, these are housing types that wouldn't have been permitted as of right. So someone would have had to come through, get a planning application approval prior to their building permit. Now it's straight to the building department. And that was exactly what we were hoping to see. That's what we wanted to facilitate with the housing friendly lens, and something that we think is really important to monitor to see how effective has that work been. And so we thought it would just be interesting to show with council. I mean, many of you will be familiar with where some of these units are, but just to give you a sense, here's some of the additional residential units going up in agricultural settings. You'll see some of them are very much a traditional stick build. Others are modular, which is great with the modular industry we have in Huron. We're also seeing a lot of these sort of shed houses, shouses, some people call them. And this is a great one just north of Exeter in Bluewater. But again, it just shows you the range that Huron County residents are really taking advantage of these new opportunities. A great multi-unit building. This one is in Wingham. So a new apartment building that I understand is very close to nearing occupancy, which is exciting. We have some really innovative developers. And so this is a great project from Dungannon. The Summers brothers had done this one, and it is a passive house. So really helping to demonstrate how initial investments in housing construction can lead to reduced heating and cooling costs and overall make that unit more affordable over time. I thought this is quite an exciting one. Lots of row houses. I could have put up lots of pictures of these, and I think they are just been such a well-received form. So we are seeing these move up in lots of different communities. Again, very walkable, an efficient use of land and services. And again, just a little bit more compact. So we're able, from a builder's perspective, to yield an extra unit, which maybe helps to keep costs down overall. This is a spotlight on some of the great potential in our downtown. So what we know in many of our downtown spaces, we've had units up above. Over time, some of those units have fallen maybe into disrepair. They haven't been rented maybe to the full capacity. And this is in Clinton on the main street, 12 revitalized units, which is just great to see, sort of helps to support the vibrancy of downtown. And just as a note, for those municipalities that do have a community improvement plan, this would be the type of thing that you could help to fund, should you wish, through a CIP. Also having some very exciting things happening out in the agricultural area in terms of our need to accommodate labor. So the bottom picture is at Hayter's Farm, so in Dashwood, and the one above is actually a new row house going up on a large dairy farm in Central Huron. And the idea there is they're looking to accommodate persons who work in the facilities on the farm in these units. Again, long-term care, this is the new Southbridge in Goderich. We understand Southbridge has also broken ground in Exeter on the new long-term care there. I mean, as we know, between 2021 and 2041, the number of individuals in Huron over the age of 75 is going to double. So we need to be thinking about every time we're making a decision about a planning application, about, you know, how do we help to facilitate housing and housing options that are going to accommodate that particular demographic as they move through the life cycle. And this is an important piece of that puzzle. Purpose-built rental, again, really important. We did hear that there just weren't enough rentals in Huron. This has been an issue from a workforce standpoint, so very excited to see that. Newly developing areas, so lots of new plans of subdivision that are being finalized and built out. So we have Goderich, Seaforth, and Saltford shown here. A great new 20-unit apartment building in downtown Exeter. Again, this was as of right, no planning application required. So that's, there would have been, oh, sorry, I apologize. There would have been a site plan approval, but otherwise no planning approval required. Just a great example of how are we streamlining residential development. Infill is still a great option. The plexes, so the multi-unit dwellings. So at the top, we see 2 4-plexes in Brussels. We've got Egmontville, we've got Exeter. These are all units that were built as of right and are helping to meet housing needs moving forward. And finally, I would be certainly remiss not to draw attention to the incredible work that Huron County Council is doing, both in Goderich and Exeter, in helping to bring on units for those that truly do need some additional help and some subsidized housing. So just, I think it's a very exciting overall picture for Huron. We are down slightly, but in terms of overall permits and overall unit yield, but that is consistent with what we're seeing across the province and even on a national basis. So overall, good news story for Huron. And I think my takeaway from this is certainly that the residential housing work that has been done has been effective to date. We will continue to monitor that. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And I'm going to go to council. Is there any questions or comments regarding Denise's update to us? Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Through you to Denise. Denise, if the contractors 5 years ago had started building on the size of lots and the smaller houses that they're doing now, I'd have thought that they'd listen to the desires of County Council and the Planning Department of what we actually needed in the county. The unfortunate part is I think we're only seeing shrinkflation, I think is the correct term, is that the developers have found a price range that they feel they can still supply to the market and get their houses sold. So they just have to build smaller units to meet that number. It's not that they're trying to fit a proper demographic. I think they're still going for the same demographic they always were. Unfortunately, things just cost a lot more right now.
Thank you for those comments. Any others?
If I could, through you, Mr. Warden, this is great information for council because I think many times in our municipalities, it's easy for us to have ingrown eyeballs and just look at our own municipality. However, when we see it on a county basis and see how the trends are, I find it very, very beneficial. So thank you very much for this great work and bringing it to us, Denise. Thank you.
And Councillor Klopp.
Thank you. The information is always good. Just a comment was made. We've got about the average in housing from 2016 to 24, because these numbers are way down. They're way down in our municipality too. But I just make an observation that the cost to run the department has gone up relatively higher than our average number of applications over those number of years. And I think it's something we need to keep a handle on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any further? And if not, Denise, it's good to see such a good mix and variety of residential units across the county. And I'd be looking now for someone to receive the report from Denise on this. So Councillor Dietrich and Past Warden Ginn, those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Denise. We're going to move on to our progress report from Derry Wallace on our climate change adaptation. So welcome, Derry, and when you're ready, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I will just share my screen now. All right. Hopefully everyone can see the title page. Thank you for having me today. It's lovely to see you all virtually. I am going to be presenting on the 2024 progress update to the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan. So just a bit of background, and Stephanie set the stage really well this morning as well. But back in 2019, the county did conduct our own climate projections for what we can expect in our area for the next 20 to 80 years. And the data showed that by 2050, we're projected to see warmer weather in general, as well as with more extended and warmer days throughout the year. We're projected to see 66 millimeters of rain per year. And as maybe the winter storm we've seen recently has shown, more unpredictable and frequent extreme weather events. All of this data contributed to the need for the corporation to want to take action. So in 2020, the county created a vision that we were being committed to a leader in taking action to reduce, respond to, and recover from the impacts of climate change, both on the corporation and on the community as a whole. This vision drove the development of the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan starting in early 2019. And to date, the last few years, we've been in the milestone 4 and milestone 5 area, working on implementing the actions within the plan and monitoring, reviewing those actions to make sure we are reaching our targets and reaching our goals. So today, the progress report touches on how we've been tracking and reporting on our progress on an annual basis. Overall, as Council may recall, there are 5 priority areas for actions within the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan. Within those areas, there's a total of 14 goals and a total of 63 actions. I am happy to report that over the last 4 years, staff, senior management, and council have initiated and achieved 53 of those 63 actions, which relates to 84% of the actions within the plan. Here is a visual of the different priority areas for actions and goals within the current plan. Infrastructure and assets focuses on our built infrastructure as well as our natural assets, so our county forests. Health and safety relates to the well-being of county staff, but also the community as a whole. Innovation and growth focuses on the county wanting to take opportunities to be innovative in our approaches to adaptation. Engagement and partnerships relates to the county continually raising awareness within the corporation and the community for opportunities to collaborate with other organizations. And resiliency and continuity relates to our constant ability to continue to operate in an effective and financially feasible manner. So each of these priority areas have been tracked as well to see what actions we have accomplished. So as you can see in this diagram, there is a range of percentage of actions that have been achieved in each priority area, with 90% of actions either being ongoing or achieved in infrastructure and assets, as well as engagement and partnerships. And it's really nice to see that all of the areas across the board are above 70% being initiated or accomplished. Next, I'm just going to highlight a couple projects that have been successful over the past couple of years for the county and this year's data for them as well. So first, I will just touch on the electric vehicle chargers that the county both owns and operates. So in 2024 alone, there has been 231 charging sessions done at our 12 charging ports across the county. So that's quite successful. Through those charging sessions, we dispensed over 5,000 kilowatts of energy, and that has related to about $3,800 in revenue solely in 2024 for Huron County. And that value is after the deduction in the electricity costs that come along with the chargers. And over their lifespan, they have eliminated over 7,000 kilograms of greenhouse gases from entering the atmosphere through community emissions. I would also just highlight that these numbers are quite impressive, and they demonstrate that our chargers are becoming more known to the community. The usage is also much higher generally between April and October, so you can see that there's a tourism use of them as well. Next, highlighting an action in our infrastructure and assets category, but it's the rural roadside strategy pilot. This pilot program was initiated in 2022, and it involved the naturalization of 2 rights-of-ways out front of 2 county forests, so Stevenson Tract and Adams Tract. And in 2023, the Planning and Development Department, as well in partnership with the Public Works Department, seeded wildflower seeds along these rights-of-ways. And in 2024, we were actually able to plant additional wildflower plugs, so flowers that are already established, as well as approximately 80 trees along these rights-of-ways to continue to reestablish that forest edge and create some competition for any invasive species that are unwanted in those areas. Last project I will highlight from this year is the completion of the climate risk and vulnerability assessment that the county completed with WSP, and this was focused on our bridges and our large culverts. So what you see on the screen is demonstrating the risk levels that our different bridges and culverts are at based on different climate hazards that could be expected in the future. It did demonstrate that a lot of our bridges and large culverts range from special to significant risk, and this is mainly due to precipitation events, the 100-year flood events, very hot days, and heat waves that are to be expected in the future. These climate risk scores for each individual asset have been incorporated into our asset management system and plan to help with decision making moving forward. Here's just a highlight page from the progress report on the various actions that were accomplished this year from the plan. Ones to note are we have continued to work with staff on engagement exercises through the corporate sustainability blog. The corporation did add our natural assets, so our county forests, to the asset management plan, including current levels of service for those assets. We also signed the Sustainable Tourism Pledge through the Economic Development Department, and we completed the 5-year update to the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan, which will help us make decisions on retrofits for our facilities in the next 5 years. So just wrapping up, thinking about the year ahead, we are looking to complete an update on the corporate climate change adaptation plan, which I will be touching on in my next presentation this morning. So I'll leave that at that for now. We are also looking to consider an economic analysis on the feasibility of both electric or hybrid vehicles for our fleet in the future, and considering developing a sustainable tourism plan, along with continuing the implementation of the Rural Recharge Program, which is looking to implement level 3 and level 2 chargers in Huron County through a third-party implementation partner. With that, I will be happy to take any questions. Thank you so much.
All right, Council, is there any questions for Derry on her progress report? Seeing none, then I would be looking for a motion to receive this report. Past Warden Ginn, Councillor Alvin McClellan would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. So Derry, continue on with your next report to us, please, the adaptation plan update.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'll just give a brief overview of what the terms of reference included, and then I'd be happy to take any questions after that. So in 2025, the county is anticipating an update to the corporate climate change adaptation plan, as the original one was approved by County Council in October of 2020, and it was a 5-year plan. The purpose of the plan update in 2025 is to recognize the corporation's successes and develop additional actions that align with new corporate and community needs and priorities. The update will be led by myself with support from the Planning and Development Department and the Climate Change Steering Committee, which is composed of several department directors. The plan review and update process will involve several action items, including updating our future climate projections in Huron County, conducting risk and vulnerability assessments of different climate hazards, and creating updated greenhouse gas inventories for the corporation and community using available tools and locally available data. This data will also include the information that was shared by the Nuclear Innovation Institute this morning. So that was really nice to see the warm reception of that data. Additionally, there will be a large engagement process guiding the plan update to ensure both internal and external perspectives are included to create that holistic understanding of the current and future needs and desires in Huron County. Internally, a staff-wide survey will be conducted, along with a workshop with leaders from across the corporation to determine what risks and vulnerabilities the corporation may face and the desired actions within each department. As for the external engagement, perspectives and feedback will be gathered from service groups, local municipalities, and partner organizations to understand their needs and desires for future climate actions. Opportunities for public input will be facilitated through a Huron County Connects page, an online survey, and dialogue with both Sustainable Huron and Water Protection Steering Committees. The final plan update will incorporate recommended adaptation and mitigation actions with associated budget requirements, timelines, performance indicators, and the responsible department or organizational leads. To complete the corporate climate change adaptation plan, staff have included $1,500 in the proposed 2025 budget. An update to the corporate climate change adaptation plan presents an opportunity to create formal dialogue, provide education, and promote understanding about the impacts, risks, and opportunities that climate change presents in Huron County. At this time, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you.
So council, is there any questions for Derry on this update? Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just want to say that we often talk about how we're leaders as a county. And when I look at the last two items on our agenda, it is clear to me the excellent work that we continue to do. So I just want to say thank you to all the staff that work so hard on these initiatives and move the machinery forward for us, because I think it's really an excellent job that's being done. Thank you.
Thank you, and council would agree with that statement. Yes. Thank you for that. Councillor Klopp, did you have something?
Yeah, it's all good stuff. When I hear we're going to look at, I thought the goal was we're trying to reduce the fact that we're going to go to 31 hot days and +3 degrees for Huron County. That's the goal. Obviously, I thought that's what we started spending money on here. When we talk about we're going to upgrade our forecasting for our numbers, where in Huron County are we getting these numbers forecasting what the climate may be in 2 years, 5 years?
Derry, could you respond to that, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden. That's a very good question. So we do have weather station in Clinton, but there is federally available data through climatedata.ca. So that incorporates all historic data from the 1950s as well up into 2100. And that uses climate simulation models to predict what the climate will be in the next coming years. Staff have begun to look into those future projections, and there is showing a slight difference in terms of the climate has changed over the last 5 years, so we can expect it to continue changing going forward. So it's important to update those projections as time goes on.
I guess I'm just looking at the standpoint of, are we duplicating having people at the lower level look at what we're paying provincial and federal scientists, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just what I'm looking at as a counselor to the rest of the council. On one example, you mentioned earlier that we're going to study electrical trucks and work on that. Again, I think the fleet department should be able to handle that, no different than when they started looking at 4-wheel drive trucks versus 2-wheel drive trucks, forklifts versus manual labor. Those things are just mechanical and should already be done. And I just hope we're not having 3 or 4 people go to the fleet department to look over their shoulder and write down what they're already doing. Because really, when it comes down to electrical trucks, it's no different when they decide to go, colleagues, when we went to diesel trucks versus gas. It's just strictly, what is it going to be economical, et cetera, and it's done. It's not magical that it's electric trucks. I speak from experience a little bit. It's not, it just comes down to cost. Can you justify it? Does it look like a truck? Does it work like a truck? And can you save money? No different than we make a decision to buy a diesel truck versus gas, 4-wheel drive versus 2. It's all wonderful stuff, and I'm not trying to sound like a Debbie Downer, But at the same time, we don't need to be duplicating and having extra costs put on people at the taxpayer. If at the end of the day, we already have the information and we want to put it on a piece of paper and see it, fine. We got to start practicing reducing this greenhouse gas, because for any of you that in farming, if we have 31 days in Huron County that are above 30, well, it's just not going to be pretty. So it's again wonderful, but I just hope we're not just spending a lot of time duplicating what's already out there and colored slides. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Klopp. Derry, do you have any response to that comment?
For sure, yeah. Through you, Mr. Warden. And Councillor Klopp, I agree. Duplication is not necessary in this case. Myself will be working with our fleet department to gather the data we already have that exists, and we'll be using that to do an economic analysis for Huron County's specific needs. So understanding how far our vehicles are traveling, what their towing capacity needs to be, and can those electric or hybrid options be applicable for our specific fleet. We know that they're available out there. Cost effective over the lifetime has been shown to be more cost effective to actually have an electric or hybrid vehicle, but we want to make sure that they're appropriate for our specific needs in Huron County.
Thank you, Derry. Any other? Seeing none, then I'd be looking for a motion then if someone would want to approve the report that Derry has presented to us. That would be Councillor Basnet, and Councillor Lobb would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to cultural services, and there's a youth engagement presentation from Beth Rumble. Beth, when you're ready, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Okay, so this presentation will serve as an update to Council on what the priority of youth engagement has looked like in the Cultural Services Department specifically. And just recalling, oh, sorry, next slide, Lubitsa. Recalling the priority setting day in 2023 when Council discussed youth being the future and making sure that we're considering them in the decision-making process, and that we can incorporate them in our decision-making as well. That I'll structure the presentation around the ways that youth are being engaged, supported, and empowered in cultural services. Next slide, Lubitsa. So first, looking at the ways in which we engage with youth, we are doing that more specifically through developing youth spaces in our branches, and I'll speak to that more in depth in an upcoming slide. Similarly, we're doing a lot more programming focused on youth and meeting their needs, so I will speak to that more in depth in an upcoming slide. We do have our youth strategy at the museum. This was previously presented to County Council, and it serves as a framework for how the museum goes about engaging with youth, and you'll see some of the results of that throughout this presentation. And lastly, we engage with a significant number of Huron County youth through our school visits, specifically at the museum, particularly looking at numbers so far in 2024 versus 2023. We've seen about 60% more students at the museum this year. So getting close to 2,000 students visiting the museum, which is really great to see, and lots of fun and laughter throughout the museum on those days as well. Next slide, Lubitsa, please. So this is just a thank you card that we received from one of the teachers. It's great to see that the students are excited when they are coming to visit the museum. We are very grateful to Compass Minerals, who provides a donation to cover funding costs. We do see that that's a significant barrier to schools being able to make those trips. So that has really helped support that increase that we're seeing in students as well. The types of school groups that we have visiting range right from our primary grades up through high school. So we're seeing all ages visiting the museum as well. Next slide, please, Lubitsa. So circling back to youth spaces and some of the work that we've done in the last year, this is through funding that we received from the McCall McBain Foundation that's allowing us to expand some of the work that we've done to support youth. In Seaforth, we've added a glass wall to create a dedicated space for youth in the branch. As well, in our Exeter branch, we've done some space upgrades, adding glass inserts to some of the doors to the programming room there so that we have sight lines to the space that has now become a dedicated youth hub, that is in partnership with the Well Community Collective. And that's been really successful, that the library provides the space and the snacks, and the well is helping to find facilitators to support the youth when they are attending that drop-in hub. And you can see in the other photo there that we are currently collecting ideas from the youth so that it is designed by them in what they want as far as what the space looks like and both the types of activities that are available in that space. And lastly, in Brussels, we have plans for future upgrades there as well, that we see an ongoing group of youth coming to the branch after school. So making space upgrades there, and there'll be additional furniture added to all of these spaces in upcoming years as well. Next slide. So we have significantly increased our programming geared toward youth. Things like the Taste Like Home Cookbook 2.0, that's a partnership with the LIP, where we were able to highlight high school students' art and recipes, and even the artists who facilitated that were youth themselves. So that was a really fun and exciting project. We host a short story contest that does have a category for youth that continues to grow every year. And you can also see other examples of programming that we offer for youth at both the library and museum. Specifically, things like virtual reality, that's not necessarily just youth in a silo using those headsets by themselves. We run collaborative programs. For example, one youth will wear the headset and have to defuse a bomb based on instructions from the rest of their team who has the manual. And a fun new partnership was with the Cooking Club at GDCI, where we helped them create their historic menu for their recent event. Next slide, please. This is just an image of an Art with Ashley program. Ashley's one of our branch assistants who is actually a youth herself. And in investigation, about 30% of the Cultural Service Department is what we would consider youth. So that is really an asset that helps us stay attuned to the youth needs and how we can support them. Next slide, please. So we also strive to support youth in their endeavors. For example, at the annual Multicultural Festival, we frequently feature youth performers. And we also want to amplify their voices by partnering with them. So in the top photograph there, that is Sam. He's a local homeschooler who found that his access to quality microscopes was lacking. Through help with a library staff member, Sam applied for a United Way Youth in Action grant to add 3 microscopes to the circulating Huron County Library collection. And the bottom photo there, that's Lucas. He's a youth who was flying coast to coast to inspire youth to follow their dreams in aviation. So he stopped at the museum this summer to provide a presentation as well. We also provide youth support through the LGBTQ2S+ Youth Social Connection. That happens at the Goderich branch, where we provide the space and facilitation so that youth can meet and interact with other youth. And finally, opportunities for volunteer hours, whether that's the traditional hours that you might do by supporting library or museum work, but we also provide more interesting opportunities, such as youth who are interested in drama can volunteer as a behind the bars character in the summer months, or at the library, youth who are readers can submit a book review and receive library or volunteer hours for that as well. Next slide, please. Lastly, we always hope to empower youth to explore and learn. Every summer between the library and museum, we hire about 6 youth staff that are typically university students. And we also welcome co-op students and interns throughout the year as well. They certainly help us at outreach events throughout the year, particularly in the busy summer months, reaching all corners of the county. Additionally, we did have a co-op student who created a museum display that traveled to several library branches as well. So that was a great opportunity for them. We always provide our youth with support, but we do encourage them to take a leadership and ownership role over the projects that we give to them. So one example of that is with the events that they are planning for Historic Places Day. They will conceive of the idea, they will book the performers, and they will support the promotions of that given event. And then we have our library summer reading students who plan, coordinate, and deliver exceptional summer programming every summer. Regarding promotions, we find one of the key assets of our youth is their ability with technology. And this summer in particular, we had a lot of fun with our youth creating some really, they were fun, but they were also really important and impactful reels. So for example, G is for jail, or there's another one that in a very fun way reminds visitors to the museum of what the artifacts they can and cannot touch. So if you want to look back in our feed for those, they're worth a look as well. And lastly, we have youth working with us. It's a tremendous opportunity for them to build a variety of skills. So whether it's job specific skills such as, cataloging or some of the promotions that we've talked about, certainly using their creativity in new ways, and also building their soft skills, that it's certainly an opportunity to learn some of those ways that we communicate with one another and how we go about planning projects and the sort. So in summary, the priority of youth has sparked many opportunities to become better in tuned with them and to create opportunities for youth to get engaged with cultural services. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Great presentation. And Councillor Besnet, you have a question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden, excuse me. I want to say thank you as well, Beth. That presentation, it's nice to see the involvement we have with our youth. And I think I'm hopeful that maybe we can share some of that on our social media outlets as well with the Huron County Facebook page. I noticed a recent post with our Accessibility Advisory Committee with the awards, and I thought that was great to see on social media. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't realize how engaged we are with the youth. So if we're able to share that at a more outlet with social media, I think that would be a benefit as well. And it might spark the interest of other youth that don't realize what's going on here in Huron County in regards to that. And I'm happy that you mentioned the well community as well. I sit on the cabinet with Shannon McGavin and Bill Walker, John Peevers, and Chad Richards. And I literally just voluntold Councillor Noel to come sit on the cabinet with us as well. So she is now a cabinet member, and we're hopeful that we're going to have a new location here in the town of Goderich at the Kinsman Center for them to have a place to go and enjoy as well. It's important for youth to have a space to go enjoy and to own that space as well and feel welcome. So, oh, holy, you're choking me up here. No, I just love everything about this. And a lot of the things that I saw in the report, I'll be quite honest with you, I didn't even know was happening myself. So I think it's important to get the positive stories out there as much as possible. So thank you again for all your work.
Anything else? So Beth, it's one of Council's priorities to enhance youth engagement. And I think this presentation shows us that that's really being done. And it's great to see that kind of uptake on these activities. So with that, I would be looking for a motion to receive Beth's report. Councillor Bazinet, second by Councillor Finch. Those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to administration, policies and other issues. We start with homes to the aged, and it's our asset management plan. And I believe Mike Bloomhagen is going to speak to this report.
Thank you, Warden. So initially, this was really just for information. It provides some information in terms of what some of the upcoming pressures are for the homes. And this was work that was provided to us through some consultants that did just some asset management plans for a number of our facilities. So you'll see there was a chart listed in the report as an attachment, and it just kind of highlighted some of the expenses over the next 8 to 10 years for the homes where we have some of our peak pressures. And with any plan, you can plan as much as you want, but we've had some information just come to light over the weekend that some of the work that we have presented in the plan here for 2026, 2027. The boilers are unfortunately, one of them at Huron View failed over the weekend, and they're just trying to piece it back together. With that, we will have some, so the information that I actually have in the plan before you is a little outdated. Based on that, we were hoping to get that work done. So we knew the HVAC systems, including the boilers, were at end of life. We were hoping that we could phase in the work over 3 years, which is what we had incorporated. But that is unfortunately probably not going to be the case. So we will probably have to bring back some more information soon, because we're probably looking at a replacement sooner rather than later for that. But aside from the HVAC, we have the call bell system we're going to push that to next year for Huron View, or sorry, for 2026 for Huron View. We're doing Huron Lee right now, and we're going to have some additional HVAC work, and then we're going to be looking at generators, which are ongoing, and windows and doors at some point, and roofing. Sorry, windows and roofing in the future, but those are really the biggest pressures over the next 10 years for the homes. But really, it's that HVAC system that we're going to have to address probably sooner rather than later. So that was a little bit of news. That came over the weekend and not reflected in this report, but we expect that we'll provide some additional information. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike. I believe Past Warden McClellan has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. It's not as much a question as a statement at this point. If you go through the CAO's dashboard report, we've received, I think, probably most or all of the information that we had asked about through the request when we did the meeting with Mr. McIntosh about the homes. But we don't ever sit down with all the information at one time to have a good pros and cons about a direction. We would receive some information, we'd talk about it for 10 or 15 minutes, and then at a different meeting, we'd receive some information and we'd talk about that for a little bit, but we never did a complete package. And I still have a concern that more than 10% of the levy that the lower tier municipalities paid to the county is providing a service that's competing with private industry. And I'm not sure that we should be doing that. And I still think there's a need that we have a specific meeting where all that information is put together and we have that discussion of, is there merit in us doing it? Is there merit in doing something different? I realize we've got information that says it's a long-term phase to do something different, but whether we make a decision now or you make a decision down the road, you still got that long-term phase. And so the decision has to be made at some point. If county council goes through all the information at one point and says, you know what, we like status quo, we're going to stick here, I'll drop the whole thing. But I don't think we've ever had all the information at one point, and this just adds to that concern when it's more than 10% of the budget that we pay to the county every year is to supply this one service, and we are competing with private industry. And I think we need to have that meeting, and I would ask that at some point we put that together to have county council do that entire review at once.
And Past Warden McClellan, I'm going to turn over to CAO Work for response for that.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I'm just going to respond with a bit of context, and then I'll get to your comments, Councillor McClellan. So I asked Treasurer Blumhagen to put this in front of you because, as you know, Council is aware, we will have at this point have been working a number of months on putting the budget together. As we're putting the budget together, there are fairly significant numbers associated with the homes, capital projects. That information is going to be coming in front of council in the second meeting in December. That's when we distribute hard copies of the budgets in front of you. I wanted to put this information in front of you. It's sort of to give you a sense of what it's going to look like over the next number of years based on the information that we have. So Dana, Mike, myself, and our staff have in relation to the capital projects now and coming up over the next number of years. So that's why this we've had it for a little while. Mike and I have talked about it. I think it's important for council also to be aware of it, just sort of in the back of your mind as we're having budget discussions. Specifically in relation to Councillor McClellan's comment. So the process that we follow at the county for bringing big topics in front of county council is we really baby step our way through the conversations with county council. So what we will do is we'll check in periodically with county council with the terms of reference to say, how close are we to understanding the issue and where county council stands on this? because anytime we have big topic discussions, it's a lot of staff work. And if there isn't a political appetite for us to go in one direction or another, and we're just doing this to defer a decision because it's a difficult decision, it's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. So what we did as a staff is we put together a series of reports. They were terms of reference reports. We brought them in front of County Council. We said to you, how are we doing? Are we close? County Council said, yep, keep going. Okay. We went back. We put together a little bit more information. We brought it back to County Council. How are we doing? Are we close? Absolutely. Keep going. We finally reached a point where County Council said, we don't need any more information. We don't want to have this discussion anymore. So that is why at this point, we're in a position where that's great. So County Council, here's the information on the assets that we have. This is what we anticipate things are going to look like on a go-forward basis. And as far as staff is concerned, what we will do is take a look at the existing system that we have. We will do an analysis of it. We're proposing those dollars in the 2025 budget to make sure that we are as efficient as possible. But other than that, we aren't doing any additional work outside the scope.
Okay. Councillor Warren McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I cannot dispute with any of the comments the CAO has made. I do believe that's exactly how we got to where we are. My frustrating part is that sometimes when we would get those reports, the sentiment in the room would lean one direction. But then we'd get another report with more information about something else, and it would then have a different feeling at the end. And my concern is that we didn't get everything all at one time. And I'm not disputing the fact that this is the direction staff was given and staff brought back the information that was requested. But I think for County Council to do justice to the work that's put into it is that we should have all the information in front of us at one time, go through the whole thing as one package and understand the pros and cons. And as I said, if County Council is willing to do that, and even after reviewing all that, they say, you know what, we don't want to go there, we're going to stick with status quo, I will gladly tip my hat and say, I'm fine with that. My concern is the fact that we just haven't had all the information at one time in one location. And I think that might make a difference, especially now that there's even a little more information being added to the cost of what it is costing the lower tiers to run this operation.
CAO work?
Yeah, so just one additional comment. I mean, ultimately, it's council's decision. There are dollars associated with us as a staff and in terms of priorities and putting all of that information together for County Council. My position based on what I see with council is there isn't the political appetite. If I receive feedback from County Council that there is political appetite for us to continue this discussion, absolutely that commitment will be made. I need a gesture from County Council that political appetite, I need that direction from County Council that political appetite exists in order for us to do additional work on this.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would put a motion on the floor that County Council request the information be gathered at a time that's appropriate. And I'm not going to set a timeline because it's up to staff to know when they're available to put it all together. And if it's seconded, but that we review all the information at a specific meeting or a special meeting to resolve this once and for all. In my mind, it's not, but if the rest of County Council thinks it is, so be it. And so that would be my motion.
So a motion has been put forward. Is there a seconder for that motion? Past Warden McNeil would second that motion. Any further discussion? So I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That motion fails. Okay. All right. Any further questions for our treasurer on this report? So I'm going to ask that we receive the report from our treasurer, Michael Bloomhagen. Heffer and Dietrich. Those in favor? And that is carried. Our borrowing bylaw, Mike is available for questions if there's any questions on that. Seeing none, then I'd look for a motion to receive this report as well. So Councillor Alvin McClellan, seconded by Past Warden Ginn. Those in favor, and that is carried. And I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute comfort break, and we'll return in 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Welcome back, and we are at the Town of Goderich Court Security Funding Request, and our treasurer, Michael Bloomhagen, is going to speak to this. Michael.
Thank you, Warden Heffer. So the report before you today, just in terms of the recommendation, I feel it's really just a council decision in terms of where council wishes this request to go, and that's why I have it set up in terms of and further that the approve and not approve. So just looking for direction from council on that. So in terms of the numbers that I provided, so I've included $200,000 just as a reference in this report. That has just been an average in terms of the costs over the last 5-6 years for the town. So that's where that $200,000 would be coming from, and what my expectation would be if this were to be supported moving forward, that is reconciled on an annual basis. So that 200 is just an estimate right now, and if it were to be supported, it would be reconciled based on actual costs. So you can see in the one chart, we've been as low as 115,000 in terms of a funding deficit based on actual costs or reconciled costs, and we've been as high as 268,000 for some years. So that's where that 200 is just an average. It's a placeholder. So the trouble with some of the estimates as well is there's a timing difference in terms of when those costs are actually reconciled. So at the time that the town had prepared their report, they hadn't received their 23 or 24 numbers, actual costs yet. So there's always going to be that timing delay in terms of when that reconciliation actually happens. But that would be my expectation if supported. It wouldn't just be a flat amount that we would support. It would just be based on the actual reconciled costs. So there's always going to be that timing difference. But I did provide some information just on the POA revenue. I know it was mentioned at that council meeting where this was brought forward that maybe we could look at the POA revenue as a potential source to cover this. And I just have some information there that that revenue has kind of been accounted for at this point about 10 times over for other downloads and pressures that we have. So it's not really available funding for other sources. So this request would be a hit on or an increase on the levy, regardless, even if it were to be covered by POA or corporately. I'm recommending corporately, but regardless, it would be a pressure or an increase on the county levy. The equivalent of that would be about 0.38%. And in the report, I have included a chart in terms of what 200,000 would look like based on the current weighted assessment for each of our local municipal partners. So that 200 would be cost shared. So ACW's share would be 25,000, Goderich would be 19, and South Huron would be 33. So that would just be an example of that distribution of what that impact would be for this funding pressure. And I think that is there anything I would... And yeah, in terms of the AMO announcement, I wasn't sure how that would tie into this particular report. I still feel that despite that announcement, I think that's maybe more specific to the dramatic increases that were lower tiers or municipal partners were facing. I still feel that there'd probably be that shortfall regardless to some degree, not sure what it would be. So I think there would still be that pressure felt locally regardless of that increase. So one other point to consider, if council wishes to proceed with this, what is that year that we would look to support? Would it be the 2025 funding year moving forward, or would it be, previous years, whether it be 2024 or current year, or would it be from Jan 1 onward? So that would be important to determine as well in the final motion that would be presented by council. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And I'm sure there's going to be some comments here. Councillor Basnet.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. I want to thank Treasurer Blumhagen for his quick work on providing this report to County Council. I know the request I had was aggressive, but I do appreciate the fact because, we would like to see this happen for the 2025 budget. That would be our goal moving forward. And the reasoning behind this is it's quite simply being fair and equitable. This is a Huron County facility. It serves the county of Huron. It just doesn't serve the town of Goderich. And I know there's been comments that, well, the county courthouse is in the town of Goderich, so the town of Goderich benefits economically from it for the businesses that we do have. And that's a true statement. People will support our local businesses. Just like I'm sure in Central Huron, the OPP detachment supports the local businesses in Central Huron, and so on and so forth. So is it a benefit to our businesses? Sure it is. But there are other facilities in every municipality that I sure benefit their businesses as well. At the end of the day, we have a shortfall. And on average, it's $185,000 over the past 6 years that the town of Goderich is required to pay. And I think the $200,000 that Mr. Blumhagen has brought forward is probably going to be pretty close to spot on, because now when we walk through the facility, we see 2 OPP officers and a metal detector. That is going to be an increase of a cost to the town of Goderich, not to anyone else, but to the town of Goderich. And we're looking at that and we're thinking, not all the prisoners are coming from just the town of Goderich when they're transported here. Not all the courts are just about the town of Goderich. The courts is regarding everyone in the county that comes to this facility. So we feel it's fair and equitable if we were to split this up amongst either the 9 lower tier municipalities like Treasurer Blumhagen has provided here, or the other option is the county looks after the levy at 0.38% increase, whatever it is. We are fine with either option. Whatever the simpler option is, we would be quite happy with. And I just want to comment in regards to the letter from the Solicitor General's office. I believe all mayors received it. And my letter was dated November 29th, and the government of Ontario is continuing, keyword, continuing its annual 125 million court security prisoner transportation transfer payment program for the 2025 calendar year. So what that simply means is they're going to continue to give $125 million. The cost isn't decreasing, the cost isn't increasing, but our court securities and prisoner transportation cost is going to increase. So that shortfall is most likely going to increase as well. As Mr. Blumhagen stated, we don't know what the fee is going to be for 2025. We can make assumptions, but at the end of the day, we're always going to be dealing with a shortfall. The information's in the report from the past 6 years. We always have a shortfall, even after the government gives us some money. So those are my comments at this time.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else? Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. 2 things. One, I guess, would be a question to the town of Goderich. When I wasn't happy with the shortfall in the OPP costing, I contacted our local MPP, and she worked diligently and effort was put to it, and the problem has been either corrected or mostly corrected. Has the town of Goderich ever approached either the MPP or anybody else that could possibly get an answer on whether they could get assistance on this for the same reason? And the other thing is that it's tough to make a decision on something that's affecting our next year's budget when you do them piecemeal, one at a time. We need to see the overall package, whether we went all out, and it doesn't matter whether you call it the 0.38 or you go with the list, because that list, I think, is just the 0.38 divided up to the share that everybody's doing. So they're both the exact same thing. Whether we did the whole thing, whether we did nothing, or whether we were somewhere in the middle, I still think it should be forwarded to the 2025 budget discussion as part of an overall package. So those are my comments. Thank you.
First of all, I'll ask if there's any response.
Yes, response is yes, we have contacted MPP Lisa Thompson, had several conversations with her. We also made her aware of the conversations that we're currently having, and she said that the best approach right now is to do exactly what we're doing, is coming to the county and looking for the support from the shortfall from the county. So the conversations have been happening.
Councillor Finch?
Yeah, thank you. Through the warden, I concur with Councillor McClellan, but I guess the concern I have is that although there's obvious costs with the court security, there's obviously a direct benefit, economic benefit for Goderich to have the courthouse, which benefits Goderich directly and not the 8 lower tiers. In fact, there's always a clear presence of OPP officers in Goderich just because of the courthouse. Here, OPP officers who are here to testify at court proceedings travel in and out of Goderich. There's clearly more OPP presence in Goderich regularly because of that. When they are here in this building or traveling back and forth, they are not at their assigned locations, such as the 8 lower tiers. If a call comes in, the officer has cleared the courthouse, they can be dispatched quickly because they are closest to the call. Officers, lawyers, and witnesses who travel from outside of Huron County are providing even more economic impact, including the hundreds of witnesses or visitors who will spend money on the square. This is something that the other lower tiers do not have the benefit of. If during the 5-day week, an average of $400 gets spent daily due to gas, meals, shopping by all that visit here, that is an economic impact of $104,000 yearly. Each lower tier already spends money on prisoner and court security, as that's just how it's set up. If the roles were reversed and South Huron had the courthouse on our main street, we would be experiencing the same economic benefit of having the number of visitors that would be shopping in our downtown, eating at our local restaurants on a regular basis. So would Central Huron or North Huron or anywhere else. Respectfully, I appreciate this being brought forward, but I think this is a cost of doing business when you have the courthouse in your community. I would suggest, though, that this is a case of advocacy with Goderich by approaching the province again, that this is a provincial responsibility. I believe we need to stand in solidarity with Goderich and advocate together. Look what happened recently with the recent actions that resulted. Municipalities argued the unfair increase of policing costs for 2025. Those are my comments.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think with respect to the comments I've heard sort of in opposition to this idea, I want to go back to what Councillor Bazinet has mentioned about equity and fairness, because when we're dealing with the cost of court security and prisoner transportation, it's essentially a double download, right? The province has downloaded a lot of responsibilities to the county, but then they've jumped over the county and sort of done a leapfrog to the home municipality of whatever municipality houses a courthouse. That means that the ratepayers in Goderich are footing the entire bill for the security costs. We may see some economic benefit as a sort of spin-off of having the courthouse here. But I guess my argument would be that a place like Huron East with one of the homes for the aged there would also see an economic spin-off from all the family members who are visiting folks in the homes, from all of the people who are traveling into the jurisdiction to work, et cetera. So I think that any one of our 9 lower tier municipalities does receive some economic benefit when there is a county building operating in that jurisdiction. So I would say that in my mind, neutralizes the argument that you've made about economic benefit just for the town of Goderich. The Auditor General did do a report on this cost sharing. They did find that it's clearly unfair to the lower tier municipalities that have to foot the entire bill. But they've also said that the provincial government has no appetite to deal with this. And so you are seeing municipalities like Grey and other places across Ontario working together to try to find an equitable solution, because it is a service that everyone in our county actually is benefiting from. We know that the POA revenues are coming into the county. We know that the county is receiving lease revenue from the Ministry of the Attorney General for having the courts here. And that's a benefit to all of us. So I think that it behooves us to look at this like it's also a cost to all of us, and that we deal with this as a community as opposed to individual lower tier municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Do I have anything else from Past Warden McNeil?
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And through you, I'm not convinced that this is a county responsibility. Policing is allocated on a municipality basis. And I feel if we were to compensate the town of Goderich, it should be on a municipality basis that has been laid out by our treasurer, as opposed to the county. This will add 0.4% to the county budget. And I'm not convinced that that is the appropriate thing to do. I think if this was entertained, it should be on a municipality basis. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Vanstone.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. I would like to see this brought back to budget time, because we all live around the town of Goderich. The Huron County is all the way around it. And I don't think it's fair that they absorb the whole cost. And so whether it comes from the municipalities or it comes from the county of Huron, I think we should look at it again, and I'd like to see it come back to budget. Thank you.
Okay, I believe Councillor Klopp has some comments. I believe you're muted, Councillor Klopp.
I think you muted me. But anyways, yeah, the issue for me is it's about the cost difference. Is it a benefit for Huron County other than Goderich? And that to me is the argument. And I can see some of that argument. And I think it should be, I agree, it should go to budgets so that we, as we see everything. But I don't, I think there's a good argument there. I think it is, like the motion here says 200,000. Be clear, I think Councilor McClellan verified it. It's not about lower tier. The 200,000 as an example is on the levy, and it broke it down. But the treasurer can verify that. It really is at the end of the day a levy. I think though that to be fair about it, the average is based on lower times. I think to be fair, the last year's cost, and as we pointed out when we walk into the building now, it's unfortunate, but we have to, we have what, at least two officers tied up. I guess it's a sign of the times. So I think the real costs are probably this past year and going forward. So to be more transparent to all the taxpayers, I think the levy would be based on this past year and going forward, not 200,000. I would rather that the motion just states that going forward, the difference between the provincial funding, of which of course we'll always lobby, and we can do that as a whole group, but that aside, that's the real number. And have that discussion. I think it needs to happen. I'll support it to go forward, but again, let's have it all at the budget. Let's do as we do with every other group, and then see what happens. And on also further, we have to start looking at other savings, and we should have those discussions. But I do buy the argument that's been brought forth. The extra overrun, is there a benefit to all of Blue Water, to all of Huron County other than Goderich? And I agree with that.
Okay, I believe Past Warden Ginn has some comments as well.
Yeah, as far as the economic development to benefit the Goderich, I think we can make that argument really for any county facility, you know, whether it's, you know, here in Lee in Brussels, or whether it's, you know, a road building, a patrol yard, you know, in Zurich, or wherever our county facilities are. This is a county building sitting on county-owned land with county staff, and I think that responsibility falls at the county to cover the shortfall. So I'm fine with putting 200 into the budget, put it into the budget, and, you know, we'll discuss it and see where it goes from there. But for consideration, I think it should be into the budget. Yeah, those are my comments. I mean, the OPP detachment moving to the town of Clinton, yes, there's economic development benefits for that, but they are for every facility that the county owns. And that's where my thoughts lie. Thank you.
Councillor Lobb?
I can agree with the argument for that 200,000, and I'm comfortable with that. My comment, though, is that I think it should be reviewed in 3 years, because the amounts may change significantly. So whatever decision is made, I think they should make sure there's a factor in there that the amounts be reviewed within 3 years or 5 years.
Councillor Bazinet, you have some comments.
Yeah, and this will hopefully be my last comments. You know, in the report, and most recently in July of this year, Grey County did support Owen Sound with their shortfall. And there have been a few other counties that have agreed to provide funding support to local municipalities with courthouses to address these court security pressures, including Dufferin, Grey, Lambton, and Oxford. And I've just been made aware that Brockton is going to be going to Bruce County and asking for the same support as well. So we're not the only ones. There are models already out there that have been created. And I would like to make a motion that 200,000 be allocated for the 2025 budget, and that we look at all 9 lower tier municipalities as shown here as supporting the shortfall moving forward.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor Finch.
Yeah, thank you. And I just don't think we want to lose sight of the fact that we have these other counties that are talking about putting funding into it. This is an opportunity to push back to the province and say, this is your responsibility. Because if we accept it and just continue to be downloaded upon, what's next? So I think this is an opportunity to work with those other counties and advocate on behalf, as I said earlier, on behalf of Goderich at the Huron County level, and all the other counties should be doing the same thing, advocating back to the MPPs and say, this is not our responsibility. You're dictating to us, so we need to put that back on you.
Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I agree with you, Councillor Finch, insofar as there is a continuing opportunity for advocacy, and we should continue to work hard to have the province recognize that this is not something that any of us should be dealing with. But that doesn't change where we are with this particular issue. It shouldn't remain one lower tier municipality's responsibility that all 9, again, I believe all 9 benefit from. We can pass the motion and we can advocate as a county as opposed to just the town of Goderich continuing to advocate. Thank you.
That's Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would just like clarification on Councillor Bazinet's motion. I had mentioned the fact that I did believe we should put it into the budget for discussion. He used different wording, and I'm asking for clarification if that means it's for sure in the 2025 budget technically already approved at 200, or is it just going in there for discussion of county council at this time?
Our CAO work has a response to that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Warden, what I would recommend is if there is a motion that I'm hearing, it sounds like it's for consideration in the 2025 budget, at which point you would be looking at it sort of all at the same time, and the decision would be made at that point, and that generally is the process that council follows, and that's what I'm hearing coming out of the discussion at this point. That's my understanding. We do not have that. No, I'm not making a motion. To be clear.
We're getting close, but we're not quite there yet. Councillor Noel.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess I have one further question for clarification then, based on what I've just heard, and that is, would that mean that each year going forward, we would have the same discussion that we're having right now, as opposed to dealing with it once and then putting in each budget going forward for the global discussion with perhaps a 3-year or 5-year review, as Councillor Lobb suggested would be appropriate? Because I think that that makes a bit of a difference, and I'm not quite sure I understand what it is we're talking about here. Thank you.
I believe CAO work can help clarify that for you.
Maybe I'll see if Councillor McClellan wants to.
Thank you. Actually, it's pretty straightforward because at the end of the day, there's going to be a financial record that shows what the shortfall is. Once that reconciliation is done, which it won't happen, I believe, until after April of the following year because of the provincial timeline, so that if in fact the county council agrees to pay it, whether it be a percentage or whether it be the whole thing, I would suspect that that would be in the budget until we could try and twist the arm of the province to pick up the tab. But again, I can't make that final call. That will be county council's decision. But if we agree to do it, I would suspect that we're agreeing to do it. It's not a one-off.
CAO work.
And just to follow up on that, county council has the discretion to make changes in their budget every year. So if at a certain point county council decided to go in a different direction, we had a mover and a seconder and a motion passed, then they could decide to go in another direction. So it's not a guarantee.
And just for council to remind yourselves, every item in the budget is up for discussion every time we review a budget. So just keep that in mind. Councillor Basnet.
Yeah. Yeah, and my idea with the motion was for serious consideration from county council for the 200,000 in regards to 2025 to look after the shortfall. And we might not know what the numbers are for quite some time, but that's why I want to see those numbers in there for serious consideration. And to just bring further what Councillor Noel said, and she very well said as always, but we agreed with the Gibbon Street build. The majority of this council agreed to go ahead with that. And we agreed with that at a $13 million cost. But we also said if there's opportunities to advocate to the province, then we would continue to do so. And I think this is the exact same model. We agreed to Gibbon Street. Hopefully we agree to this, and hopefully we can continue to advocate. We are going to continue to advocate. Right? But we don't want to have to continue to come to county council and ask for support. This is a little different. We feel this is the fair, equitable way of handling the shortfall moving forward. So thank you.
Councillor Finch.
Yeah, thank you. Regardless where this goes, I think in the interim, we should be gathering support from the other counties that are facing the same dilemma and have a motion go forward to seek their support and push back to the province.
Our clerk has something to comment.
So there's been a lot of discussion, and I believe I missed your motion, Councillor Bazinet. Can I ask what specifically you moved?
So I would like the 200,000 to be placed in the 2025 budget for consideration from Huron County Council to cover the shortfall of the 2025 shortfall.
Can I suggest that
Yes.
the motion that is printed in the agenda, the first paragraph, basically we're receiving the report from Treasurer Blumhagen, and then we're going to delete the second paragraph, and we're going to go with the third paragraph, and it's going to be as printed. The Council of the County of Huron directs staff to include 200,000 in the funding support to the town of Goderich in the 2025 budget for consideration. Those are two new words, to assist with court security and prisoner transportation funding shortfalls incurred from January 1st, 2025 onward, to be adjusted based on the actual reconciled shortfall.
That is why you're the clerk and I am not. Thank you.
So we have a mover.
So moved by Councillor Basnet. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Past Warden McClellan. Those in favor?
Oh, good question, sir, sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Klopp.
Yeah, no, sorry, and I'm not there, and so not your fault, my fault. So the 200,000, but then I heard reconciliation. Is the 200,000 the max that's going to go for discussion? And if it's less, it's less. I just need that clarification.
And our treasurer will respond to that.
Thank you, Warden. The 200 is just a placeholder. It's just a guess. The actuals would be based on the reconciled funding shortfall. But that would be adjusted based on that timing difference. So it would probably be a bit of probably an 18-month lag or a year lag from when we're guessing. But it would be adjusted in that particular year. So there will always be that timing difference. But I didn't propose it as a max. It's just a placeholder in the budget. So.
That I don't think that's how the motion reads. I think it says 200,000, and then I think a ratepayer who would maybe disagree with my vote could argue you agreed to 200,000, and if it's less, it's less, not over. I said I would support this to go to budget, but I also am a stickler for let's be upfront and honest with people, and then they can have an honest debate with me, if nothing else. Right now, the last year's budget for this is about, it's not in front of me, but it's not an averaging of 200,000. It'll be more. I guess that's what I kind of wish that there'd be no number in there. It's just we agree in principle to this for discussion and actually have a more honest number. And it might be less. I'm hoping it is. The government's going to kick in 250,000 more. Let's hope it does. But I really don't like how the motion perceives that it's 200,000. Because right now my guess is it's going to be 300,000, and maybe that's going to be an excuse for someone else to vote no right now, but I don't think so. It really is about the principle to me, but I just don't like that we're, it's going to sound like it's only going to be 200,000. I bring that point up just again because I don't like to surprise people any more than I have to.
Councillor Clark, I'm just going to read you that last half sentence of that motion, and it says to be adjusted based on the actual reconciled shortfall. And I think that addresses what you're getting at there. So I'm at a point where I'm going to call, my apologies, Councillor Harding.
This isn't any fun being on Zoom on a day like today. I'm really, I'm scared of the weather though. So I just, I can side with Goderich's point of view on this. But I still want us to keep in mind that we want to advocate for help in this matter, because our advocating for the help with the other police funding issue has really paid off, and we're impressed with that. And I hope we can, as a group, advocate for help with this too, and hopefully we'll get it. And if we don't, I think it's something that I agree with, that we all have to share. I just the waters are awful muddy for me today here.
Councillor Harding, thank you for that. Councillor Finch, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. And to Councillor Harding's comments there, if county has the appetite to push back and advocate with the other counties, I'd be more than happy to make that motion after this one is decided upon.
Councillor Basnet.
And just an update, we have sent a letter to the Solicitor General as well as MPP Thompson, and we will continue to advocate. And I would be happy to second Councillor Finch's motion when we get to it.
All right, then let's call this question. Those in favor of the motion? And that is carried. And I heard a follow-up motion. Is that something council wants to put forward? Councillor Finch?
Yeah, thank you, through Warden. Again, I believe we need to, I'll let the clerk decide on how to word it, but a strong letter opposed to the downloading and the fact that the county or the town of Goderich is actually paying for that the county of Huron supports advocacy with the other counties to push back and make it a provincial responsibility when it comes to court security.
And once our wordsmith is ready, she will read that to us.
The Council of the County of Huron request a staff prepare a letter of advocacy regarding court security and prisoner transfer funding shortfalls.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Bazinet. And I believe Councillor Harding, you have comment?
I just wanted to second it.
Sorry, Doug, I didn't see you in time.
Well, I just wanted to, I know, I still think the other members of the 9, why our weight has to really help on this, so it does, and because I know it has helped in our advocacy in the past. So I just wanted to know that I'm on board for working at this.
All right, thank you. Past Warden McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Susan knows her job better than I know her job, but I would suggest that it might be beneficial if, in fact, we include the financial report that was in here and also the statement about the fact that we now have extra police that have to be here on a regular basis, because we supplied the financial information to Lisa, facts and figures, black and white, and I think that made a difference. She indicated that made a difference when she had documentation that actually showed the numbers rather than just saying, can you help us out with this?
And those comments are noted by the clerk.
Thank you.
Councillor Finch.
Thank you, through the Warden. As we all know, there's strength in numbers. Just rethinking this a little bit, one thing to send it to the ones that are impacted today, but I wonder if we could send it to all the courthouses, with municipalities that have courthouses in their jurisdiction, if that's possible. Thank you so much.
So since we have a happy clerk, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? And that motion carries as well. So we are at our annual accessibility plan, and our clerk Susan is going to answer questions if they come to us. Thank you. And Sahil is joining us as well. Welcome, Sahil.
Oh, there's Sahil. So Sahil is fairly new to this role. He is now the accessibility coordinator and inclusion, diversity, and equity specialist. I'm going to ask you to turn your video on just for a second, Sahil.
Yes.
There he is. Lovely. Thank you. Oh, he's walking. So this is his 2 plans. If there's any questions, he's happy to answer any questions.
Okay, welcome, Sahil. Council, is there any questions on this update? Seeing none, then I would be looking for a motion to receive this report. Councillor Noel and Councillor Lobb would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. All right, thank you, Sahil. Number 5 is our fees and service charges bylaw update, and our clerk Susan and Deputy Clerk Lubitsa are available for questions. And be reminded, as we stated early in the meeting, that page 4 is removed from the report. Any questions on this report? Could I have someone put a motion forward to receive this report? Councillor Heffer, seconded by Councillor Finch. Those in favor, and that is carried. Strategic priorities are in our package, and our CAO, Megan Warwick, is available for questions if there's any on that chart. And seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Is there anything from our list of correspondence that anybody wants to? Oh, back up. We're going to have a mover and a seconder to receive our report from CAO Warwick. Councillor Noel, Councillor Dietrich, those in favor, and that is carried. Is there anything in the correspondence that anybody wants to pull from that list? Councillor Finch?
Yeah, 12.11, please.
So you put that forward as a motion, and is there a seconder for that? Past Warden McNeil? Those in favor? That is carried. Anything else from the list? Yep, receive and file the rest of the information correspondence. So Councillor Lobb.
12.2, the one about doing the assessment. Have you already supported that?
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Noel would second that.
Oh,
So
okay.
those in favor?
Okay.
And that is carried.
Okay.
Anything else before I move on? Councillor Finch.
Yeah, thank you. 12.13. So we're uploading the cost of the OPP cost back to the provincial budget with no cost recovery to municipalities. That was a Howick Township.
So 12.13, resolution from Howick Township. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Klopp would second that. Those in favor? And that is carried. Dare I ask one more time, is there anything else to pull from that list? Councillor Lobb.
12.4, the redistribution of the provincial land transfer tax and GST to municipalities.
12.4, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Noel, those in favor? That is carried. We'll receive the rest for information. Moving on to 13 is, I just did that. Oh, we need a motion. Clerk needs a motion for this. So that's past Warden Ginn and Councillor Dietrich. Those in favor? That is carried. New and unfinished business, and it would certainly be in our best interest to make staff aware of that ahead of time. Do I hear of anything at this point? Seeing none, I will move on to our bylaws, and I'd look for a mover and a seconder for the 6 presented bylaws in our package. So Councillor Elvin McClellan, Councillor Heffer, those in favor, and that is carried. And we do have a close to the public session, so we'll give a few moments to clear the gallery and get set up for that closed session. And good day to those that are leaving our meeting at this time. So we'll have a motion to go into closed session. Past Warden Ginn. Councillor Finch would second that. Those in favor? That is carried. We will get ready for closed session now. Okay, we are back in open session, so I would ask for a rise and report from closed from our CAO, Megan Work. After we do a motion to come out of closed, Megan will do that. So past Warden McClellan and Councillor Finch, those in favor, and that is carried. Go ahead, Megan.
Thank you very much. The purpose of going into closed session today was for council to receive information on labor relations or employee negotiations for SEIU, interest arbitration award, and to provide us with a bargaining mandate.
Thank you, Megan. What I will do now is ask for a mover and a seconder to direct staff to proceed as per direction given and closed to the public session of December the 4th, 2024. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Finch, Councillor Heffer, those in favor, and that is carried. And secondly, that the Council of the County of Huron direct the warden and required staff to execute the SEIU homes for the age collect agreement for the term of January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2023 as per interest arbitration. And further, that a bylaw be prepared for the December 18th, 2024 meeting. Past Warden Ginn, seconded by Past Warden McNeil. Those in favor, and that is carried. Just make yourself aware of the upcoming meetings. They are in our package, and I'd be looking for someone to confirm our actions for this morning. Councillor Bazinet, second by Councillor Elvin McClellan. Those in favor, that is carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Dietrich, Councillor Heffer, those in favor, that is carried. Thank you. It was a longer meeting than we had for a while. Thank you for your time getting us through that. Have a safe drive home.